A 17-year-old black girl walked into a packed auditorium, not to take a test, but to prove her mind wasn't a lucky guess. The nation's top mathematician smirked as he handed her a sealed envelope, one designed for her to fail. But when she picked up the chalk, what she uncovered didn't just silence the room. It shattered his career and exposed a buried secret no one was ready to face. What did she prove that wasn't supposed to be provable? Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. The air in Ridgecrest Preparatory Academy's room 317 always smelled faintly of dry erase markers and polished wood, the scent of expectation and pressure. The school was one of the most prestigious in Virginia, a place where students wore ambition like armor. Every equation on the board was another rung on the ladder to college admissions and scholarships. But today, something unspoken buzzed beneath the surface of the usual chatter. Something electric, uneasy. It began as it often did with Journee Wallace. She sat in the third row, left side, a notebook open in front of her filled with dense strings of numbers and symbols. Her handwriting was neat, almost architectural, every line deliberate. The sun from the tall windows fell across her brown skin and caught the slight sheen of anxiety on her forehead. She wasn't nervous about the math. She was nervous about being seen doing it. At the front of the room stood Dr. Calvin Mercer, Ridgecrest's pride, a 40-something mathematician with a Princeton doctorate and a reputation for being tough but fair. His graying hair gave him the look of wisdom, though his eyes often narrowed when Journee raised her hand. "All right," he said, voice crisp, turning to face the whiteboard. "Let's revisit the sequence problem from yesterday. Most of you didn't quite grasp it." He wrote out the problem in bold numbers, his handwriting slanting sharply. It was an iterative series, the kind that usually left even the confident students staring blankly. Journee's pencil was already moving before he finished. Dr. Mercer turned, chalk still in hand, and noticed her scribbling. He hesitated. The briefest flicker of something crossed his face. "Journee," he said, tone deceptively mild, "would you like to share your thoughts on this one?" Every head turned. Journee looked up slowly, unsure whether it was an invitation or a trap. "I think I can," she said, her voice calm but steady. "By all means." He stepped aside, gesturing to the board. She walked to the front, every step weighted with invisible pressure. The room was silent, except for the creak of her sneakers on the floor. As she picked up the marker, her fingers trembled, not from fear of failure, but from the memory of every side-eye she'd earned in this room. She wrote quickly, confidently, filling the board with a cascade of steps that seemed effortless. For her it was like breathing. Numbers made sense when people didn't. When she stepped back, Dr. Mercer's smile was thin, almost polite. "That's quite an approach," he said finally. "And you're sure this is your own work?" A ripple passed through the class. Journee blinked. "Of course." He leaned against his desk. "You're positive you didn't see this solution online? Or perhaps get a little inspiration from elsewhere?" The words landed like a slap. Journee froze, her hand tightening on the marker. "I don't cheat," she said quietly. Dr. Mercer tilted his head. "I'm not accusing you. I'm simply asking for transparency. This solution mirrors something I saw from a graduate thesis years ago." Someone snickered. Someone else whispered, "No way she figured that out herself." Journee turned, scanning the room. The faces of her classmates blurred. Some uncomfortable, others amused, none coming to her defense. Her voice quivered slightly. "I just followed the pattern. The logic was there," Mercer interrupted. "Then perhaps you can explain to the class why this sequence converges at 3 instead of diverging infinitely." She did, flawlessly. Every step, every principle, she laid out with clear precision. Even he couldn't find fault with the logic. Yet when she finished, he didn't praise her. He simply smiled again, that professional, clipped kind of smile. Impressive. Still, it's unusual for a student your age to demonstrate that level of abstraction. The word unusual clung to the air. It was the kind of word people used when they meant impossible. When class ended, Mercer gathered his papers with deliberate slowness. Journee lingered, waiting for a word of acknowledgement that never came. Instead, he said, "Journee, a word, please." She approached his desk. "I know you're gifted," he said, his tone lighter now, almost friendly. "But you must understand, mathematics is about discipline and integrity. The internet makes it too easy to borrow ideas." Journee's chest tightened. "I didn't borrow anything. You can watch me solve it again." He looked at her for a long moment, as if studying something beyond her words. That won't be necessary. Just be careful about overreaching. People start expecting miracles, and when you can't deliver, it reflects poorly on everyone involved. She nodded silently, feeling her throat burn. The words everyone involved echoed with subtext. Everyone involved, meaning him, the school, the reputation of Ridgecrest. The black girl couldn't be the outlier who outshone them all. When she walked out, several students stood waiting near the door. Paige, the class's top white student before Journee's recent rise, gave her a thin smile. "Guess we all know who the teacher's watching now," she said. Journee didn't answer. She walked past, eyes fixed straight ahead. But that afternoon, whispers followed her. In the cafeteria, in the hallway, by the lockers. "She's cheating. No one solves Mercer's problems that fast. He's probably giving her pity grades." By the end of the day, she couldn't tell which hurt more, the rumor or how easily people believed it. That night, she sat at her desk at home, staring at the same problem again, forcing herself to rederive every step. The paper filled with markings, her pencil pressing deeper each time, until the graphite snapped. She exhaled shakily, leaning back, her eyes burning. Her mother, Danica Wallace, peeked into the room. "Still working, baby?" Journee forced a smile. "Just practicing." Danica stepped closer, glancing at the stacks of solved equations. "You're already ahead of your class. You don't need to prove anything." Journee swallowed hard. "Feels like I do." Her mother's hand rested on her shoulder for a moment. "Then prove it for yourself, not for them." The next morning, Journee walked into class with her head high. Mercer was already there, erasing the board. The class filled slowly, conversations dimming when she entered. When the bell rang, Mercer turned from the board and clasped his hands together. "Before we begin today's lesson," he said, "I want to address something." Journee's stomach dropped. He continued, "Several students have expressed curiosity and concern about last week's test results. One student in particular scored perfectly on a section where even my honors students struggled." Murmurs rippled across the room. Paige smirked. Mercer's tone stayed calm, almost neutral. "Now, I believe in fairness and accountability. So, to ensure full transparency and academic integrity," he paused for effect, "I've decided that Journee will demonstrate her problem-solving process live for the class tomorrow." The silence that followed was suffocating. Journee's pulse thundered in her ears. "This isn't a punishment," he added quickly, though his voice carried that same patronizing edge. "It's an opportunity to show your peers how you think." Journee's hand trembled slightly against her notebook. "But, no buts," Mercer said, his voice cutting through hers. "We'll prepare a suitable problem. It will be timed, unassisted, and observed by the faculty." Students began whispering again. Paige leaned forward, whispering just loud enough for Journee to hear. "Guess we'll see if lightning strikes twice." Journee didn't respond. Her chest rose and fell as she stared at the board, where Mercer had already started writing equations. The classroom buzzed with the thrill of spectacle. What he had just done wasn't an academic request. It was a challenge. A public dare. Journee sat frozen, realizing what it truly meant. He hadn't just questioned her skill. He'd questioned her right to have it. Her pencil snapped again between her fingers. The sound was small but sharp, slicing through the murmurs. And Dr. Mercer looked up, expression unreadable. "Tomorrow," he said softly, almost smiling, "we'll see the truth." Dr. Mercer makes a shocking announcement to the class. Journee will be forced to prove her talent publicly, her credibility hanging in the balance. The next morning, the classroom air felt heavier, thicker, like a storm waiting to break. Journee Wallace sat quietly at her desk, her notebook open, but she hadn't written a single word. Around her, conversations flickered like low fires. "I heard she got the answers from some grad student online."
"No, my brother said Dr. Mercer's gonna expose her today."
"I mean, she's smart, but not that smart." Each comment sliced through the silence, yet no one spoke to her directly. Not even the ones who used to. She felt their eyes on her, darting away whenever she looked up. Her best friend, Tiana Rivers, leaned closer. Tiana's tone was gentle, but her eyes burned with quiet anger. "You know they're scared of you, right? That's all this is. You made them feel dumb." Journee exhaled. "Then why do I feel like I did something wrong?" Before Tiana could answer, the door opened. Dr. Mercer walked in, crisp and deliberate, his suit ironed to perfection, his expression unreadable. He didn't start class immediately. Instead, he rested both hands on his desk and looked directly at Journee. Journee, he said evenly, are you ready for today's demonstration? Her pulse quickened. I guess. You guess? His smile was faint, the kind teachers used when they were about to humiliate a student under the guise of teaching. The rest of the class went silent, their anticipation palpable. Paige from the front row whispered something under her breath that made two students chuckle. Journee rose and walked to the front. Her palms felt damp, but her steps were steady. She didn't look at anyone except the board. Mercer handed her a folded slip of paper. This, he said, is a problem I wrote myself this morning. I'd like you to solve it for the class, step by step, explaining your reasoning. Take your time. Journee unfolded the paper. The problem was monstrous. An advanced integration sequence with nested variables. Even college freshmen would hesitate. She glanced up, and Mercer was watching her closely, not with curiosity, but calculation. Her mind began to race. She picked up the marker, drew the first few symbols, and paused. For a second, the room seemed to tilt. Every whisper, every doubt pressed down on her. Then something clicked. Her breathing slowed. She began writing faster, the way she always did when she found rhythm in numbers. Her explanation was clear, sharp, almost melodic. The trick is to isolate the denominator and track its limit behavior. Once you rewrite it using the substitution, she didn't notice Mercer's expression shift. The pattern resolves into a recursive function. She finished softly, writing the final answer, 0.28. The room was silent. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Mercer's voice cut through the stillness, smooth and dangerous. 0.28. Journee turned. Yes, that's the solution. He tilted his head, the corners of his mouth twitching in what wasn't quite a smile. Interesting. Is it wrong? She asked. Oh, it's right, he said, pacing slowly. Perfectly right, in fact. His tone hardened, which is precisely the problem. Confusion rippled through the room. Mercer picked up the paper from his desk, the same problem, and held it up. I just checked this online. It appears that an identical question, with an identical step-by-step solution, exists on a graduate-level mathematics forum. A few gasps broke out. Journee's stomach dropped. That's not possible. He raised a hand, silencing her. Journee, plagiarism is a serious offense. Even referencing work without acknowledgement. I didn't. Her voice cracked. I didn't even know that existed. Tiana shot to her feet. She doesn't cheat. You gave her that question this morning. Mercer's tone stayed maddeningly calm. And yet the odds of her reproducing a graduate-level solution, word for word, are astronomically low. Unless, of course, she had prior exposure. Journee's throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to defend herself. But every word caught in the weight of disbelief surrounding her. The class wasn't looking at her like a student anymore. They were looking at her like a fraud. Paige folded her arms, voice low but venomous. Told you it was luck. Mercer ignored her, but didn't stop the murmurs spreading across the room. Journee, he continued, you'll have an opportunity to explain yourself formally. I'll need you to accompany me to the principal's office. The entire class turned to watch as she gathered her books, her hands shaking. Tiana whispered fiercely, don't let them break you. You're better than this. Journee tried to nod, but her vision blurred. She followed Mercer out, the sound of laughter and whispers echoing behind her. The walk down the hallway felt endless. The walls, lined with plaques celebrating academic excellence, seemed to mock her now. Mercer said nothing. His footsteps were steady, authoritative, a man confident he was doing the right thing. When they reached the office, he motioned for her to sit. Principal Harding looked up from her desk, her expression curious but guarded. Calvin, she said, what's this about? Mercer folded his arms. A matter of academic integrity. Journee submitted perfect work, again, and I have reason to believe she's been sourcing her answers externally. Journee's mouth opened, but Harding held up a hand. Journee, let's hear him out first. Mercer continued, his tone measured. We both know academic dishonesty undermines the credibility of our programs. A student displaying advanced level aptitude without formal exposure raises concerns. Harding nodded slowly, turning to Journee. You're saying you didn't cheat? I didn't, she said firmly. He gave me that problem today. I'd never seen it before. Harding studied her, her expression unreadable. You've been excelling recently, dramatically. Do you have any tutors or online help? No, just me, Mercer interjected. With respect, Principal Harding, I've been teaching for 22 years. I've seen bright students, but this level of proficiency doesn't appear overnight. She's either gifted beyond comprehension, or she's found a shortcut. Journee looked at him, a single tear threatening to spill but not falling. You'd rather believe I cheated than that I'm capable? Mercer's jaw tightened. Don't twist this into something it's not. But Harding's eyes flicked between them, between the tension that hung in the air, between the young girl defending her dignity and the respected teacher defending his authority. Something in her expression softened. Journee, she said gently, I believe you may be telling the truth. But this has caused quite a stir. Students are talking. Parents might soon be involved. We need to address this publicly. Journee frowned. Publicly? Mercer's brow furrowed. You can't be serious. I'm suggesting transparency, Harding said. If Journee truly solved these problems on her own, she should have no problem demonstrating it again, this time under observation. Mercer stepped back, clearly uneasy. That could set a dangerous precedent. Harding ignored him. Journee, how would you feel about a demonstration, a live challenge, in front of the student body? Journee hesitated. Like a test? More like a showcase, Harding said carefully. A way to silence doubts. One way or another. Mercer's eyes darkened. You mean a math-off? The words landed like thunder. Journee froze. Around her, the air felt suddenly thin. Harding nodded once. If you can prove your ability in real time, no one can question your integrity again. Journee wanted to say no, to walk away, but something inside her snapped. Every whisper, every stare, every quiet insult about her luck or privilege, it all burned together until it hardened into resolve. She lifted her chin. I'll do it. Mercer looked at her, almost smiling. Then we'll see if lightning really does strike twice. The principal suggests a public math-off, a humiliating high-stakes test that could either redeem Journee or destroy her reputation in front of the entire school. The next 24 hours passed like a slow-motion collapse. Journee Wallace didn't sleep. She tried curling up in bed, breathing through the quiet like her mother had taught her. But every time her eyes shut, the image of that classroom returned. The whiteboard, the silence, the stares. Mercer's voice. We'll see the truth. There was something cruel in the way he said it, like her entire existence in that space was a lie waiting to be unraveled. By morning, the school was buzzing. A few seniors from the robotics club had already mocked up a fake scoreboard and taped it to the lockers. It read, Journee versus the system. Place your bets. Tiana found her by the lockers and immediately tore it down. They think it's a game, she muttered. They really think this is funny. Journee didn't answer. She hadn't said much all morning. Tiana softened. You don't have to do this. You can say no. But saying no wasn't an option anymore. Not after the whispers, not after the way Mercer smirked when he handed her the challenge, like it was an invitation to her own downfall. When she walked into room 317 that morning, the board had already been cleared. Mercer stood beside it, a thick folder in his hand. Faculty members gathered in the back row, Mr. Halbrook from chemistry, Miss Dunn from English, even Vice Principal Keller. Journee realized then that this wasn't just a demonstration. It was a performance. She took her seat without a word. Mercer cleared his throat. Good morning, everyone. Before we begin today's material, we'll be observing a special exercise in live problem solving, a rare opportunity for academic transparency. His voice oozed professionalism, but his eyes never left Journee. You may proceed, he said, placing the folder on her desk. Journee opened it. Inside was a single problem, but not just any problem. This one looked pulled straight from an abstract algebra graduate course. It was layered, recursive, and deliberately obscure. Her pulse stuttered. You said this would be a fair test, she whispered. Mercer leaned in slightly. It is. For someone of your claimed caliber. He stepped back, loudly announcing, You'll have 45 minutes. No notes, no calculators. Begin when ready. The room fell into silence. She began. Each minute was an act of survival. Journee's mind fought to stay steady, unraveling the layers one line at a time. Her handwriting trembled at first, but grew more confident as she identified the theorem's root. The problem wasn't impossible, it was just veiled in complexity, meant to intimidate. And it nearly worked. Halfway through, her hands began to cramp. She paused, blinking back tears, remembering how her mother's voice had cracked the night before. "You don't owe them this," Danica had said. "This isn't about math, Journee. This is about power. And they know if you win, it changes the story." "I can't back down, Mom," Journee replied, voice barely above a whisper. "If I do, they'll say I was never real to begin with." Danica grabbed her daughter's face gently. "You are more real than any of those men who hide behind chalkboards. But just because they invited you to their stage, doesn't mean you have to dance for them." Journee had nodded, but inside she'd already made her decision. Now in front of her classmates her mother's words echoed. But so did the ones from Mercer. "We'll see the truth." She kept writing. When the timer buzzed, she stepped back, her paper filled edge to edge in tight, controlled script. Mercer approached. He didn't speak as he reviewed her work, flipping through each step with slow, theatrical precision. The room held its breath. Then, softly, he muttered, "Interesting." Journee watched him closely. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't angry either. His expression was unreadable. "Well?" someone asked from the back. Mercer raised his head, voice calm. "Journee has completed the problem. Her method is unconventional. Her final result is correct." A smattering of surprise murmurs filled the room. But Mercer wasn't finished. However, he added, "Given the uniqueness of her approach, and the similarity to methods I've only seen in advanced collegiate research, I believe further evaluation is needed." Journee's chest tightened. "Further evaluation? I'm not accusing you," he said smoothly. "But in the spirit of fairness, and since the school has received inquiries from concerned parents, Principal Harding and I have discussed a broader demonstration." She felt the floor tilt beneath her. Mercer reached into his briefcase and pulled out a flyer. "This will go school-wide today." He handed it to her. "Leave challenge. Student versus scholar. Journee Wallace versus Dr. Calvin Mercer. This Friday. Auditorium. Public demonstration." The words blurred for a moment. As she stared, her hands shook. "You're going to compete?" she whispered. Mercer's voice was icy calm. "You said you wanted fairness. Now the entire school can see it." Students began crowding around the flyer as Mercer tacked it to the wall. Phones came out. Pictures were snapped. Before Journee could even respond, the hashtag Journee vs Mercer started to spread. Tiana pushed through the crowd, grabbing Journee's hand. "You don't have to do this. This is insane." But Journee's face was unreadable now. She stared at the flyer, then at Mercer, who was already gathering his papers like nothing had happened. She turned to Tiana. "I'm not doing this because I want to prove something," she said softly. "I'm doing it because they never believed I belonged here to begin with." And as more students gathered, laughing, pointing, placing bets and snapping selfies in front of the flyer, Journee realized something chilling. This wasn't just about math anymore. This was about survival. A flyer is released school-wide. Live challenge. Student versus scholar. Journee versus Dr. Mercer. A high-stakes academic duel that could make or break her forever. And the whole school is watching. It started with a whisper, a flicker of pixels uploaded in secret. A junior named Miles, a tech nerd who lived for online drama, had filmed the entire announcement in room 317. Dr. Mercer, unfurling the challenge flyer, Journee's stunned silence, the growing crowd snapping photos, and Tiana yelling, "This is insane," at the top of her lungs. Miles didn't say much, just added a caption. "This white teacher just challenged a black girl to a math duel in front of the whole school." He posted it on TikTok before the bell rang for fourth period. By lunchtime it had 2 million views. By dinner it had 10. The comments came fast and sharp. The internet divided instantly, violently.
Hey Math Dad 71.
"This is mentorship. Let her prove her skills. Stop making everything about race."
Hey, Brief for Justice. It is about race. Would he have challenged a white boy like this?
"I STEM for black girls. Journee Wallace. We see you. Keep going. You are not alone." But not all voices were supportive. Affirmative Action Queen began trending on X. She Cheated followed close behind. Conservative YouTubers latched onto the story, filming reaction videos with thumbnails like, "Black girl tries to beat professor instantly regrets it." "Woke math? What's next?" Journee's face was everywhere. Her braids, her quiet glare, her stunned expression as she held the flyer. Some turned her into a meme, others turned her into a symbol. But none of them knew her. The next morning, Ridgecrest felt like a glass building under floodlights. Local news vans camped outside the school. Anchors in tailored suits reported from the sidewalks. pointing to the flapping copy of the live challenge flyer taped to the front doors. Principal Harding stood stiffly during a surprise press briefing, flanked by 2 school board members and a visibly uncomfortable Dr. Mercer. This event was not designed to shame or single out any student, Harding said into the microphones. It is meant to promote academic excellence. One reporter raised his hand. Would this event still happen if the student in question weren't black? Harding's smile cracked slightly. This is not about race. It's about transparency and trust in academic merit. But the footage betrayed them. Journee's silence. Mercer's smugness. The school's sudden eagerness to televise a math-off only after a black girl outshined a white male teacher. It told a deeper story, and the internet didn't miss it. Journee sat in her room, phone turned upside down, refusing to scroll. She hadn't gone to school that day. Too many cameras, too many questions. Her mother paced in the kitchen, voice trembling into the phone. No, she's not available for interviews. No, we don't have a comment. Please stop calling. Tiana sat cross-legged on Journee's bed, phone in hand, face pale. It's everywhere now. CNN just picked it up. They're calling you the math girl. Journee scoffed. Like I'm a cartoon character. Tiana lowered her voice. Do you want to walk away? We could fake an injury or something. Say you're sick. Journee leaned back against the headboard, eyes empty. No. If I back down now, they'll make that the story. Black girl exposed as fraud. Couldn't handle pressure. She paused, then added, if I go down, I'm going down standing. Meanwhile, inside a conference room at Ridgecrest, the school board huddled around laptops, watching analytics charts climb. Engagement was through the roof. What if we leaned into it, one board member suggested, scrolling through headlines. This could be a moment for the school. Principal Harding looked up sharply. You want to use her as a PR stunt? She's already viral, another board member replied. If she wins, we look progressive. If she loses, we look objective. Either way, we spin it as academic rigor. And just like that, the decision was made. The flyers doubled in size. The school ordered banners. Local news was invited to film it live. A student photographer was assigned to document the challenge for the yearbook. The school wasn't backing down. They were packaging the controversy, polishing it, branding it. Journee Wallace, accidental poster child. That night, Danica Wallace poured herself a glass of wine and stared out the window. Her daughter was in the next room, sitting in the dark, reviewing math problems, under a single desk lamp, like it was life or death. And maybe it was. Danica hadn't wanted any of this. She'd moved Journee to Ridgecrest to keep her safe, to give her a better chance. But this wasn't what she meant. This wasn't what she dreamed for her daughter. She picked up her phone and texted her brother in Atlanta. It's happening again, like it did with Dad. She never hit send. The next morning, the final twist came. An email landed in Harding's inbox, marked urgent. It was from Dr. Elliot Brand, a white man, 62, internationally recognized, a tenured professor at Columbia, and media darling of American mathematics. I would be honored to attend and supervise the live challenge at Ridgecrest. The message read, I believe it's critical we model unbiased evaluation of mathematical talent, regardless of race or background. He added a postscript, please do not inform the student ahead of time. I'd prefer to observe unfiltered performance. Harding forwarded it immediately to Mercer. Mercer's reply came back 2 words, absolutely not. But it was too late. The school board had already said yes. They saw the headline forming before it was even written. World-famous mathematician joins math-off at Ridgecrest Academy. What they didn't see, what none of them saw, was how personal this had just become. Dr. Elliot Brand wasn't just famous. He was the same man who'd once rejected Journee's grandfather's application to Columbia. The same man who'd claimed the Wallace line lacked the scholarly temperament for pure mathematics. But that truth hadn't surfaced yet. Not yet. A famous white mathematician, Dr. Elliot Brand, offers to supervise the math challenge personally, without knowing that Journee's family history runs straight through him. The Friday of the challenge arrived like a storm that wouldn't wait for warning. By sunrise, Ridgecrest's manicured lawns were already lined with media vans. Reporters rehearsed live intros under gray skies, makeup flawless, words sharpened. Today, a student faces off against her own teacher in what's being called the most controversial academic showdown of the year. Inside the school, the halls were eerily silent. Every classroom door was shut. Everyone was waiting for the same thing. Journee Wallace sat in the counselor's office, hands folded in her lap, her black blazer perfectly pressed. The fluorescent light hummed above her like a warning. Across from her, Miss Rhea Langston, her guidance counselor, looked weary, like someone watching a train wreck in slow motion. "Journee, listen to me," she said gently. "You don't owe them this performance. What they're doing isn't about truth. It's about spectacle." Journee stared at her hands. "If I don't do it, they'll say I'm scared. If I do it, they'll say I'm lucky. Either way, I lose." Ms. Langston sighed. "Then lose with grace. Don't let them make your gift into their proof of control." Journee didn't answer. Her mother's words, her counselor's warnings, all of them blurred into background noise. There was no escaping what was coming. At 9 a.m., Dr. Elliot Brand arrived. The school board president personally greeted him at the gate. Cameras swarmed as the car door opened, revealing a tall man in a white coat and a perfectly knotted navy tie. His smile was television-ready, genial, polished, confident. He shook hands with Principal Harding and waved at the reporter. "An honor to be here," he said, flashing that smile again. "A celebration of intellect. That's what this should be." But behind that charm, there was calculation. Inside the faculty lounge, out of camera range, Brand's expression shifted as he spoke privately with Mercer and Harding. "I've read the background on this case," he said smoothly, lowering his voice. "A remarkable story. A young prodigy from what? The inner city." Harding nodded hesitantly. "Norfolk." Brand smiled faintly. "Yes, exceptional narrative. But let's be realistic. The probability that her results are independently derived, statistically, minuscule." Mercer smirked, pretending modesty. "I've been saying as much. But she's got the whole internet believing she's the next Ramanujan." Brand's smile sharpened. "Public sentiment is fleeting. Data, on the other hand, doesn't lie." They all laughed lightly, but the sound was brittle. Ms. Langston stood in the doorway, unseen for a moment, hearing every word. When they noticed her, she straightened her spine. "This isn't a data set. She's a child." Brand turned slowly, his charm reactivated. "Ah, you must be the counselor. Don't worry, my presence ensures fairness." "Fairness?" Langston shot back. "You are already calling her a statistical anomaly before she's even begun." Brand's tone cooled. "If she's truly extraordinary, I'll be the first to say so. But if she's merely exceptional, we shouldn't confuse that with genius." He turned back to Harding. "Now, about the problem selection. I brought something special." By noon, the auditorium had transformed into something unrecognizable. Rows of folding chairs stretched to the back wall, every seat filled. Local reporters in press badges stood shoulder to shoulder with students clutching homemade signs. Team Journee on one side, Fair Play for Mercer on the other. The room buzzed like a hive. On stage, 2 desks faced the audience, each with a single whiteboard beside it. Journee's nameplate gleamed under the lights. Mercer's sat beside hers, smaller, but deliberately positioned slightly ahead. Journee stood backstage, pacing, her palms sweating through her blazer sleeves. Tiana squeezed her shoulder. "You ready?" "No," Journee whispered. "But I can't back down now." Principal Harding appeared beside them, flustered but smiling for the cameras. "Journee, Dr. Brand will announce the official problem. Just stay calm and take your time. Everyone's watching." Journee almost laughed at that. Everyone's watching was exactly what she feared. Dr. Brand took the stage to thunderous applause. He adjusted the microphone, smiling like a man performing a well-rehearsed role. "Today," he began, "is not a contest of ego, but of intellect. In mathematics, truth belongs to no one. It merely reveals itself to those who earn it." He turned toward Journee and Mercer. "Our participants will each receive the same problem, sealed in identical envelopes. They will have 60 minutes to construct a proof before this audience and a panel of judges." The crowd erupted again, camera flashes slicing the air. Brand held up 2 envelopes, marked A and B, one for Dr. Mercer, one for Ms. Wallace. As he handed them out, he leaned close to Mercer, whispering something only he could hear. Mercer's lips twitched with satisfaction. Then Brand turned to Journee. "I must say, Miss Wallace, your composure is remarkable. I hope today's challenge doesn't disillusion you about how rigorous mathematics can be." Journee looked him dead in the eye. "It never disillusions me. Only people do." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, and for the first time his smile wavered. Backstage, Miss Langston was arguing with the board. "You can't do this to her," she said, voice sharp. This isn't just advanced, it's malicious. You're setting her up with material far beyond her coursework. Harding's voice was tired. Ria, please. The problem was chosen by Dr. Brand. He's an expert. Langston slammed her folder on the table. He's a gatekeeper, not a mentor, and you're letting him rewrite this girl's future because it makes for good television. Harding looked away. It's out of my hands now. Langston lowered her voice, trembling with fury. You all keep calling this a test, but let's name it for what it is. A spectacle. A white man's stage dressed up as fairness. Her words hung heavy, but no one answered. Back on stage, the countdown began. Mercer tore his envelope open immediately, scanning the page with a knowing smirk. Journee held hers untouched, fingers trembling slightly. She looked out at the crowd, the phones, the flashes, the people waiting to witness either her genius or her failure. Somewhere in the third row, Tiana gave her a small nod, and beside her mother Danica sat stone still, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Journee reached for the envelope. The paper inside was thick, almost ceremonial. Her fingers slipped beneath the flap, tearing it open with deliberate care. She unfolded the sheet and froze. The words swam for a moment, her brain struggling to process them. It wasn't just an equation. It was the equation, the one she'd seen years ago, framed in an old journal, in her grandfather's study. The same unsolved theorem he'd been working on before he disappeared from the academic world. The room began to blur at the edges. Dr. Brand, standing just feet away, was smiling faintly, as if he knew exactly what she was holding. Her breath caught. He had chosen his problem. Her grandfather's. Journee opens the sealed envelope and gasps. The problem isn't random. It's the same impossible theorem her grandfather once tried to prove, and the man who rejected him is now standing on stage, smiling. The house was silent that night, except for the rhythmic scratching of pencil against paper. Journee sat at her desk, the same creaky one her mother had bought from a thrift store when she was 10. The dim desk lamp cast a pool of yellow light across a sea of crumpled pages. Her notebook was open to a single problem, the impossible theorem that now stood between her and the world's judgment. Her fingers trembled as she traced the symbols again, whispering to herself. Limit approaches infinity. Symmetrical ratio. Recursive denominator. She wasn't studying anymore. She was searching. Every number felt personal now. Every equation carried the ghost of someone else's unfinished fight. Down the hallway, her mother sat on the couch, staring at an old photo album. The TV was on, volume low, a talking head from a local news station, discussing tomorrow's historic math challenge. The host smiled too brightly, her voice polished but hollow. This isn't just about math, she said. It's about merit, fairness, and the question, can brilliance truly come from anywhere? Danica turned off the TV, the silence hitting her like a wave. Anywhere. They always said that word like it meant from nowhere. She glanced at the clock. 1:14. Journee hadn't slept. Again. Danica rose quietly, walking toward her daughter's room. She hesitated at the doorframe. The sight stopped her heart for a moment. Journee, surrounded by paper, eyes bloodshot, her lips moving soundlessly, as she wrote line after line. Baby, Danica whispered, you've got to rest. You can't walk into tomorrow like this. I can't stop now, Journee murmured. If I do, I'll start doubting myself. Danica walked in, sat on the edge of the bed, and exhaled. You've been doubting yourself since the minute that man opened his mouth. Journee paused, setting down her pencil. He's trying to humiliate me, Mom. Him, the board, the internet. They all want to see me break. I can't give them that. Her mother's voice softened. Then don't give them you. Journee looked confused. Danica stood, crossing to the old bookshelf in the corner. She pulled out a weathered leather-bound notebook, its cover cracked, its corners folded. She wiped dust from the spine. This was your grandfather's, she said quietly. I didn't think I'd ever show it to you. Journee frowned. Grandpa James? The one who taught at Booker T High for a few years, Danica finished. Yes. But that wasn't all he was. She handed the journal to her daughter. The pages smelled like time, ink, dust, and grief. Inside were careful, intricate notations, theorems, equations, entire paragraphs of mathematical reasoning, written in looping penmanship. Journee turned the pages slowly, her eyes widening. This is advanced calculus. Danica nodded. He was a genius, Journee. Pure genius. The kind that comes once in a generation. He applied to MIT, Stanford, Harvard. All of them rejected him. He used to joke that the envelopes arrived faster than the mailman could not. Journee flipped another page. A coffee ring stained one of the margins, and beneath it a sentence written in small cursive letters. If they won't open the door, I'll build my own equation to break it down. Her chest tightened. Why didn't you tell me this before? Danica sat across from her, eyes glistening. Because I didn't want you carrying his ghosts. He didn't handle it well. The rejections, the dismissals, the way people talked down to him when they realized a black man had written equations their professors couldn't even parse. Journee's throat closed up. What happened to him? Danica hesitated. He disappeared. Journee froze. What do you mean, disappeared? Her mother's gaze dropped. One night he went out to submit a paper to a mathematics symposium in Boston. He never came home. The police said he probably walked away. My mother said he was broken by the world. But deep down, I think someone made sure he never published that. Journee stared at the open journal, her grandfather's equations like echoes from another century. She traced one of the formulas with her fingertip. He was working on this theorem. Danica nodded slowly. He said it was his life's work. Something that would change the way people understood. Number symmetry. The problem he was trying to solve. It's the same one you showed me last week. Journee's heart pounded. The one Dr. Brand picked? Yes. The room fell into a stunned silence. Journee pushed the journal back toward her mother. You're saying he gave me my grandfather's equation? Danica looked up, eyes hardening. Dr. Elliot Brand was on the admissions committee at MIT back then. He's the one who wrote your grandfather's rejection letter. The weight of it landed like a thunderclap. Journee's breath hitched. That can't be possible. He'd be... Old Danica finished. With very much the same kind of man. Cold, clinical. The kind who thinks genius only counts if it's white and credentialed. Journee stood abruptly, pacing. He's testing me with Grandpa's work. He knows what he's doing. He's trying to erase him again, through me. Danica swallowed hard. He's not just testing you, baby. He's trying to finish what he started. Journee turned back to her desk, eyes blazing. Then I'll finish what Grandpa couldn't. Her mother stepped closer, voice trembling. Journee, I don't want you to destroy yourself for their approval. Journee's tone sharpened. This isn't about approval anymore. This is about truth. About taking back what they stole. She grabbed the journal, flipping through the remaining pages. Between the equations, there were personal notes, moments of heartbreak and hope. They said my logic was too emotional. They said genius doesn't sound like me. If I vanish, let my work speak louder than my name. Tears slipped down her cheek before she realized they were falling. I think he knew they'd come for him, she whispered. Danica's hand found hers. Then maybe this time, they won't win. For the first time that night, silence felt sacred. Not empty, not fearful. It was the space where legacy breathed. Journee placed her grandfather's journal beside her own notebook. 2 generations, 2 battles, 1 unfinished proof. She looked at the final page again, the same formula from Dr. Brand's challenge, and beneath it, faintly scribbled in her grandfather's handwriting, were 2 words that stopped her heart cold. Find Journee. The ink had faded, but the message was clear. Journee sank into her chair, staring at the name. Her name. Danica froze behind her. What is that? Journee looked up, her voice barely audible. He wrote my name. Years before I was born. Danica stepped forward, covering her mouth. He knew. Journee's mind spun, logic clashing with awe. He must have meant something else. Maybe. Her mother's voice cracked. Or maybe he saw this coming. Maybe this challenge was never theirs to make. Maybe it was ours to finish. Outside, thunder rumbled, a low, distant growl that rolled across the night sky. Journee glanced once more at the equations. The strange symmetry between the past and present, between erasure and rediscovery. She wiped her tears, squared her shoulders, and whispered to herself, "Then I'll give them the proof they never wanted." Danica's voice trembled behind her. "Journee, there's one more thing I never told you." Journee turned, her pulse racing. Danica hesitated, her hand trembling as she reached for the photograph tucked inside the back of the journal. It showed a young man smiling in front of a chalkboard filled with equations. Beside him was a younger Dr. Elliot Brand, shaking his hand. A caption beneath it read, MIT Research Fellowship, 1983. Danica's voice broke. He didn't just reject your grandfather, he took his research. That's why he vanished. Journee stared at the photo, the truth slicing through her like ice. Her breath came fast, uneven. Then tomorrow, I'm not just solving a problem. Danica nodded, tears streaming now. You're confronting the man who erased our bloodline's brilliance. Danica reveals the family secret. Journee's grandfather was a math genius who vanished mysteriously after being rejected by MIT. And his stolen theorem is the one she must now prove before the same man who destroyed him. The day before the challenge arrived, like a tightening fist, not fast, not explosive, just relentless pressure, the kind that crushes slowly. Journee didn't leave her room. She barely moved from her desk, except to pace in spirals or stare blankly at the wall. Her notebook sat open, untouched, her grandfather's journal beside it. She had memorized every equation, traced every line, whispered every pattern, until they became part of her bones. But math couldn't shield her from the world. Her phone buzzed every few seconds. The notifications blurred into one endless stream of noise. Messages, tags, reposts. Hey, Ridgecrest truthers. She's only getting this attention because she's black. Reverse racism. Gifted my ass. I stem for all. Parody. Journee Wallace? More like Cloutney Wallace. DM from unknown account. When you lose, maybe you'll finally shut up. She blocked. Deleted. Muted. It didn't matter. New ones came. Nastier each time. Some sent doctored photos of her head on monkeys. Others mocked her braids, her skin, her eyes. One account messaged her a screenshot of her house from Google Maps. She turned off her phone, threw it across the room. But silence wasn't peace anymore. It was just another version of screaming. Downstairs, Danica was trying to act calm. She wiped down a perfectly clean kitchen counter for the third time. She wasn't on Twitter, but she knew what was happening. She felt it in her gut. The same gut that once warned her to pull Journee from that gifted program in 3rd grade after the white teacher started calling her too confident. Journee's younger brother, Micah, sat at the kitchen table with his headphones on, sketching dinosaurs in a notebook. He was too young to understand the storm his sister was in, but not too young to feel the shift in the house's gravity. "Mom," he asked suddenly, "why are people being mean to Journee?" Danica froze. "They're not being mean," she said softly. "They're being scared." Micah blinked. "Why would they be scared of her?" Danica exhaled. "Because people are scared of what they can't control. And your sister, she's something they didn't see coming." Back in her room, Journee lay curled on her bed, fully dressed, her mind a battlefield of equations and voices. She hadn't eaten, hadn't drunk water. Her body shook, not from illness but from exhaustion so deep it felt cellular. Somewhere, distantly, she heard Danica knocking on her door. "Baby," her mom called. "Come down and eat something, please." Journee didn't move. Her ears rang. Her chest felt tight, like her lungs had shrunk. She closed her eyes. And then, everything went black. She woke up to a different kind of sound, one sharp and mechanical. A click, another one. Click, click, camera shutters. Her eyes opened slowly. Light poured through the blinds. She was still on the bed, covered in a light sweat, her clothes wrinkled from where she'd passed out. Her throat was dry, her head pounding. Then she heard it. Voices. Outside. Loud. Moving. Journee stumbled to the window. A news van idled across the street. A woman with perfect teeth and a curling iron wave of blonde hair stood on the sidewalk, holding a microphone. "Live at the home of Journee Wallace, the Ridgecrest math prodigy, who tomorrow will attempt to solve a historic equation, under the watchful eye of academic legend, Dr. Elliot Brand." Journee backed away from the window. Danica's voice rose from downstairs, furious. "You need to get off my lawn. There are children in this house." "I'm just doing my job, ma'am," the reporter said off camera. "Your daughter's story is national news. America's watching." Danica shouted louder. Journee couldn't hear the rest. She was too busy trying not to collapse again. She stumbled into the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and splashed water on her face. Her reflection looked unfamiliar. Pale, cracked lips, red eyes, the beginnings of fatigue carved into her skin like fault lines. This wasn't preparation. This was war. Later that morning, the house was quiet again. Journee sat on the couch, sipping water slowly, her limbs aching from dehydration. Danica sat beside her, rubbing her daughter's back in small circles. Micah was outside drawing chalk rockets on the sidewalk. "I should have taken you and run," Danica said, not really joking. I should have said no the moment they turned your name into a headline. Journee's voice came out rough. I wanted to be seen. Now I can't even breathe. Danica kissed her forehead. It's not you they hate. It's what you represent.
Journee nodded slowly. They didn't build this stage for me. They built it to bury me on it.
Danica's voice turned cold. Then stand on it like it's a pulpit. Let them hear every syllable of your brilliance. There was a knock at the front door. Not loud. Not urgent. Just soft. Intentional. Danica frowned, rising slowly. She opened it. No one was there, but something was taped to the door. She peeled it off. A piece of lined notebook paper, folded twice. Danica opened it and gasped. Journee looked up. What is it? Danica turned, eyes wide with horror, and handed it to her. Journee read the words slowly. Prove it. Fraud. Scrawled in black marker. No signature. No sender. Just a single threat dressed up like a dare. Journee's hands trembled. Micah came running to the door, clutching a blue chalk stick. I saw a man put it there, he said innocently. He had a gray jacket. Danica's voice cracked. Go to your room, Micah. But now. He ran. Danica turned back to Journee, her eyes shining with fury and fear. This isn't about the problem anymore, she whispered. It never was. Journee sat down slowly, her fingers still wrapped around the note. For the first time since the challenge began, she felt something colder than fear. She felt hunted. Journee's little brother finds a note taped to their front door. Prove it, fraud. The message isn't just intimidation. It's a reminder that the fight has left the classroom and entered their home. The auditorium didn't look like a school anymore. It looked like a stage designed for judgment. Banners lined the walls with Ridgecrest's gold and blue colors, but behind them were flashing sponsor logos, media cameras and ring lights mounted on poles. The podium was wired with 2 microphones. News anchors hovered in the aisles with clipboards. A row of faculty members filled the first 2 rows, and seated behind them were district officials, local board members, and a handful of representatives from the state's Department of Education. Journee walked in alone. The room fell into a strange hush as she stepped onto the polished stage. She wore a black dress with long sleeves and no jewelry. Her hair was pulled back tightly. There was no sign of fear in her posture, but it radiated in the silence she carried with her. Phones lifted. Cameras clicked. Someone muttered, "There she is." She approached her seat slowly. There were 2 desks, one labeled Wallace, the other Mercer. But Mercer wasn't seated yet. A middle-aged white woman in a gray blazer stepped onto the stage and tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm Catherine Dale, and I'll be moderating today's academic demonstration between a highly respected Ridgecrest faculty member and a uniquely gifted student. She smiled toward Journee. Please welcome Journee Wallace, a promising young mind from an inner-city neighborhood in Norfolk. A few claps, a few stifled laughs. Journee's jaw clenched. Catherine turned. And now please welcome the man who's taught honors calculus for 18 years, a proud Princeton alum and a published academic in number theory, Dr. Calvin Mercer. Applause thundered. Mercer entered from the left wing, smiling calmly, a navy blazer crisp on his frame. He shook hands with Catherine, waved at the cameras, and took his seat. Journee kept her eyes forward. Catherine stepped between them. Now, as you know, today's exercise will test both participants on abstract mathematical reasoning under timed conditions. They will each receive a separate envelope with a distinct but comparable proof challenge, hand-selected by Dr. Elliot Brand, who is here today as an honored guest. A spotlight shifted to the front row. Dr. Brand stood, smiling as if he were at a ribbon cutting. Journee could feel her mother watching from the 3rd row, her presence like armor. Catherine continued. Each problem was curated with fairness in mind and relevance to current mathematical theory. There will be no collaboration. No calculators, no assistants. This is a pure academic exercise, not a competition. But the crowd didn't believe that, and neither did Mercer. Catherine cleared her throat. We will begin in 2 minutes. Please take your seats. Envelopes will be opened on my mark. Journee exhaled slowly. As she took her seat, she saw something she hadn't noticed before. A 3rd chair placed at the center of the stage. Catherine noticed her confusion. That's for Dr. Brand. He'll be observing both of you up close. A chill ran through Journee's spine. Brand took his seat with an air of control. He leaned slightly toward her and whispered, "Remember, mathematics doesn't bend for sympathy." Journee didn't look at him. Catherine stepped forward again. "You may now open your envelopes." Journee peeled hers open. The page inside showed the same theorem from the sealed challenge. Her grandfather's. The one Brand had denied for decades. Mercer unfolded his own page. And then he stood. "Excuse me," he said smoothly, interrupting the room. "Before we begin, I'd like to propose a small variation." Catherine blinked. "A variation?" Mercer turned toward the audience. "Rather than working in isolation, I'd like to elevate the academic rigor by solving my problem live, alongside Ms. Wallace." The crowd buzzed. Journee stared at him, her pulse pounding. Catherine hesitated. This wasn't agreed. Mercer raised his hands. "No tricks, just transparency. If the audience sees us both working live, they'll understand this isn't about ego. It's about method, about who truly understands the math." Dr. Brand nodded slowly. "Let the girl decide." Journee turned toward him, realizing this was never about fairness. It was about spectacle, about comparison, about taking her moment and turning it into his battlefield. Her lips parted. "I accept," she said. Dr. Mercer steps forward and announces he will be solving a comparable problem next to her, turning it into a live duel, one that wasn't in the rules, and one that changes everything. The countdown started in quiet. 60 minutes. Catherine Dale announced. "Begin." The room didn't erupt. It tightened, breath pulled inward, bodies leaning forward, cameras focusing. It wasn't a math problem now. It was a spectacle, a judgment, a duel dressed in chalk. Journee stepped to the board, chalk between her fingers. It felt heavier than it should have, like it carried her grandfather's weight in it. On the opposite end of the stage, Mercer smoothed his sleeves, picked up his own chalk, and began writing without hesitation. Journee stared at her problem. For 5 full seconds. A blur of nested variables, abstract symmetries, and unsolved logic structures. But beneath the chaos, she felt something shift. A thread. A rhythm. She didn't see numbers. She saw memory. The proof wasn't random. It was structured like her grandfather's journal. The way he'd layered logic. Not in linear progressions but in spirals. It wasn't just calculus. It was inherited thinking. Logic passed like DNA. She inhaled once. Steady and sharp. Then she began. Her hand moved fast, slashing clean angles across the board. Her thoughts ran like fire. Lines of symmetry folding into fractals. Numbers dancing into patterns. She wrote without pausing for the first 6 minutes. Her handwriting compact, but sure. She didn't look at the crowd, or Dr. Brand, or her mother. She didn't need to. The proof was in front of her, unfolding in layers. But it wasn't perfect, not yet. Some steps came too quickly. Some felt too clean, and in math too clean was dangerous. From the corner of her eye she saw Mercer pause. He tapped the chalk against his chin, confused. A slight frown. Journee kept writing. 35 minutes in. Sweat formed at the base of her neck. Her hand cramped. She switched grip. The first half of the board was filled now, beautifully ordered. A small section in the top corner was boxed off, labeled Phase 1 Initial Symmetry Break. Brand leaned forward in his chair, reading the logic line by line. He tilted his head like a man watching a magician perform without strings. Mercer, meanwhile, had begun erasing parts of his work. He wasn't keeping up. He hadn't expected to need to. At minute 42, Journee stopped. Her eyes scanned everything she'd written. The logic was sound. The sequence followed standard proofs. But something felt wrong. It was too familiar. Too expected. And suddenly she understood. This was his trap. Brand's. The equation wasn't just hard. It was designed to seduce her into conventional logic paths. It rewarded speed, but punished originality. If she continued this way, she'd finish clean and prove nothing. It would be a technical win and an emotional loss. Because Brand didn't want her to fail. He wanted her to conform. She stared at the board. Every line she had written. Brilliant. Yeah. But they weren't hers. They were his. She dropped the chalk. The sound echoed. Whispers spread. Mercer stopped mid-step. Journee turned to the board, eyes blazing. And then slowly, deliberately, she picked up the eraser and wiped away everything. Gasps rippled through the auditorium. Danica stood halfway up from her chair. Brand blinked, confused. Catherine whispered into her mic. Miss Wallace appears to be restarting. Journee didn't flinch. She erased every line of her proof. 42 minutes of work. With 18 minutes left. She stepped back, staring at the blank board. Brand leaned forward. What is she doing? Mercer, now visibly sweating, turned sharply to look at her. The sight of the empty board sent something cold through him. He knew what this meant. She wasn't solving the problem. She was rewriting its foundation. Journee took the chalk again. This time, she started from the corner. Not center-aligned, not symmetrical. She drew a curve, then a set of spiraling arrows. She wasn't using the standard method. She was rebuilding the logic using conceptual geometry, the kind her grandfather wrote about, the kind that hadn't yet been accepted by academia because it looked too much like art. Brand's face began to change. He stood, walked toward the board, slowly, reading as she wrote. Journee didn't acknowledge him. She was somewhere else now. Not on the stage, not in the auditorium, but in her grandfather's journal, in the old notebooks, in the air between forgotten geniuses and stolen credit. She built a new proof from scratch. A visual one, not formulaic, intuitive, where recursion wasn't notation, but narrative. She whispered under her breath, "You saw this. You knew it worked." Behind her, Brand muttered, "This isn't standard logic." Catherine looked at him. "Can she do that?" He didn't answer. Journee kept going. The auditorium fell into reverent silence. 10 minutes left. Journee paused. She stepped back again. The board was filled with something that looked like a painting. A series of recursive patterns, annotations in the margins, arrows connecting variables across planes. It wasn't just math. It was expression. Brand stared at it. His lips parted. Mercer stood frozen, still 20 steps from completing his original solution. Then, in front of everyone, he lowered his chalk. He wasn't done. He was defeated. Journee stood at the edge of the board, breathing slowly. But something in her own logic, felt a gap, a flaw. She stepped forward, scanned a line in the middle, something that had emerged organically, and froze. No. She'd misunderstood a constraint. She had followed the symmetry too far, a false equivalence. Her stomach dropped. She reached for the eraser again. Brand's voice rose sharply. "What are you doing?" She turned her head toward him, calm, steady, fixing it. She erased the center section of her new proof, the linchpin that everything else depended on. Time ticked. 9 minutes. 8. She began again. Her hand moved slower now, but sure. Her breathing deepened. Every step felt personal, earned and rebuilt. Every mistake taught her something truer. Mercer sat down in his chair, defeated, pretending to organize papers he hadn't touched. Then 5 minutes left. Journee paused. Her hand hovered over the final line. One more connection. One last step. And yet, she dropped the chalk. Again. The auditorium sucked in air, and she erased the entire lower half of the board. Gasps. Audible shock. Catherine looked panicked. She's starting over." Brand stood fully now. "Wait, no." She had it. Journee turned back to the board, chalk trembling in her hand. 4 minutes left. She whispered something. Danica stood again, gripping the edge of her seat. Tiana, tears in her eyes, whispered, "Come on, come on." Journee took one long breath, and then, with her final strength, the weight of generations behind her, she made a single sweeping mark across the board. A curved bridge of logic, the missing piece, the unbroken path. But then her face changed. Something in the new symbol caught her off guard. She froze. She turned her head slightly, and stared. Her lips parted, her eyes locked on the board. A realization dawning, not just about the proof, but something buried in the structure. Her voice caught. "No way," she whispered. Journee pauses. The room silent. Then, with 10 minutes left, she erases everything and starts from scratch. But what she finds in her own solution may expose more than math, and may unlock a buried secret within the proof itself. The auditorium was silent, a kind of silence that pressed on the skin, like the air had thickened. Journee Wallace stood at the board, staring at the curve she'd just drawn. It arced elegantly across the last third of the proof, connecting two structures no one had ever dared to link. A single breath could have shattered the tension in the room. She wasn't blinking, because she saw it. Not just the answer, but something behind it. Something that had been hidden inside the very structure of the problem. A symmetry embedded, not just in the numbers, but in the design of the equation itself. This wasn't just a test of intelligence. It was a test of obedience. And she was about to disobey. She took a step back from the board, then picked up a fresh piece of chalk. Instead of continuing from her last step, She moved to the bottom corner and began to write something new. Not an equation. A statement. Let proof be redefined by pattern, not progression. She turned that sentence into the basis of a new logic. She wasn't using rigid axioms anymore. She was using rhythm, the flow of movement between elements, mathematical intuition drawn from geometry, not arithmetic. The audience began to murmur. What is she doing? Someone whispered. Another voice. That's not part of the standard set. At the edge of the front row, two faculty members exchanged glances. One leaned to the other, whispering, "That's not in the textbook. That's not in any textbook." On the far side of the stage, Dr. Mercer sat frozen. His proof had stalled 20 minutes ago, and he hadn't written a new line since. But now even he was watching her bored. Eyes narrowing, jaw tight. Brand leaned forward in his chair. He wasn't smiling anymore. Behind him stood his research assistant, a younger white man with a thin frame and nervous eyes. The assistant's notepad was half filled with scribbles, tracking Journee's steps in real time. As Journee added another line, the assistant gasped softly. Brand turned. "What is it?" The assistant leaned in. "If she's right, she just disproved your last paper." Brand blinked. Once. "What?" he asked. "She's introducing a new theorem architecture. It breaks your closed symmetry model." Brand's fingers clenched. Journee didn't notice. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Her movements were different now. Less like a student, more like a conductor. Each chalk mark was a note in a larger score. She was no longer solving a problem. She was creating a language. The symbols she used weren't from the standard mathematical library. Some looked like mirrored fractions, others like spirals merging at a single origin. They weren't errors, they were evolution. The audience didn't know how to react. Some whispered that she was guessing. Others fell silent, sensing something historic. Tiana, watching from the third row, leaned forward, her heart racing. "She's not just proving it," she whispered. "She's changing it." Danica clutched her daughter's journal in her lap, tears in her eyes. She remembered a night years ago, when Journee was 5, drawing shapes in the fog on the car window during a long drive, explaining to her mother how some numbers like to live together. That strange beauty, that instinct, it was always there. Now the world was seeing it. Brand stood. He took a step forward toward the board, but stopped himself. Too many cameras. He couldn't challenge her now. Not yet. He looked down at his assistant. "Are you sure?" The assistant nodded, face pale. "I ran the model. Her structure bypasses your limitation entirely. If she connects that final bridge." Brand didn't answer. He sat back down, but his hands trembled. Journee was almost there. She could feel it. A single unifying line, one arc that would connect her spiral mapping to the original constraint laid out in the challenge. It was elegant and dangerous, because once she drew it, it would not only prove the theorem, it would prove that the original framework had been flawed. Brand's framework, the one that had been cited in academic journals, awarded funding, and presented as cutting-edge theory in lectures around the world. Journee Wallace, a 17-year-old black girl from Norfolk, was about to rewrite the foundation of his work. Not by luck, not by guess, by truth, by brilliance. She hesitated. Not out of fear, but out of reverence. She thought of her grandfather, of the last line in his journal. "If I vanish, let my work speak louder than my name." She closed her eyes for one heartbeat, then drew the final curve. A single, elegant stroke. The room didn't erupt. It inhaled. Brand's mouth opened. Mercer looked down at his hands. And then, the timer buzzed. 60 minutes. Done. Journee dropped the chalk. She turned to face the auditorium. But she didn't smile. Because she wasn't finished yet. She took 2 steps toward the microphone at center stage.
The moderator, startled, stepped back.
Journee looked out at the sea of faces. And then, she pointed to her own proof. "To anyone wondering," she said, her voice steady, "I didn't get this from a textbook. I didn't learn it in a prep course. I didn't find it online." She paused. "I found it in a notebook. My grandfather's." Brand's face turned to stone. This problem wasn't just a test. It was a theft. Of credit. Of history. Of dignity. And I'm done asking for permission to solve what was stolen from my family. The room was stunned. Brand tried to stand, but the cameras were already on Journee. Tears streamed down Danica's face. The auditorium buzzed, not with chaos, but with awakening, a reckoning. In the front row, the assistant turned to Brand one last time. She's right. Her logic's airtight. You can't refute it. Brand's voice was low, venomous. Then we bury it. Discredit it. Say it's too radical. But a voice behind them whispered. Too late. We already live-streamed it. Brand turned slowly. A younger student, a girl with a press badge, held up her phone. She smiled. It's got 300,000 views, and counting. Dr. Brand's assistant whispers to him. If she's right, she just disproved his last paper. But before Brand can retaliate, a live stream of the entire moment goes viral, and control slips from his hands. Journee stepped back from the board. The chalk slipped from her fingers and rolled along the stage, clinking once before it stilled. And then, silence. Not just quiet, but hollow, as if sound had fled the room, unsure whether it was welcome. No one moved. No one breathed. Even the cameras, still recording, felt less intrusive, as if they too had realized something irreversible had just occurred. Journee's hands dropped to her sides. Her chest rose and fell slowly, the air thick with tension. Her proof, sprawling, elegant, revolutionary, wrapped across the board like a living organism. It pulsed with logic, bled with legacy. There were no gimmicks, no shortcuts, only undeniable truth. From the third row, someone dropped a coffee cup. The porcelain shattered, sharp against the silence. No one reacted. Dr. Calvin Mercer stood stiffly by his seat, his arms crossed, face pale. His proof unfinished, stale, small, still lingered on his board in isolated fragments. He hadn't erased it. He hadn't dared. Because erasing it would mean acknowledging he'd never stood a chance. Dr. Elliot Brand stood slowly. The lights didn't follow him, but the room's attention did. He approached the board, slowly, like a man approaching a sacred text. His loafers clicked against the hardwood floor, steady and measured. Journee didn't turn. She didn't speak. She let him come. Brand reached the board and stopped less than a foot away. His eyes moved across her work, not skimming, but scanning, line by line, curve by curve. His hand lifted, trembling, and he pointed at a recursive bridge between two spirals. This step, he murmured, voice almost too soft to catch. Where did you derive this? Journee's voice was even. It's based on a layered probability symmetry. I found a hidden constant by breaking your closed system and rebuilding it through conceptual recursion. Brand's head tilted. You redefined the constraint variable, he said, mostly to himself. She nodded. The constraint was inherited bias. The math wasn't flawed. The framing was. Gasps echoed from a few faculty in the front row. Brand stepped back, then forward again. He traced the spiral arcs, her unique logic system, with his fingertip, never touching the board, just hovering. No one else spoke, because even they could see it now. This wasn't a clever answer. It was a new language, a new map, a new proof system. One student in the front row stood without realizing it. Another followed, then two more, like witnesses to an unfolding miracle. They rose not to celebrate, but to understand. Brand turned away from the board and faced the audience. He looked directly at Principal Harding, then at the school board, then finally, at Journee. His voice was dry, measured. This isn't a correct proof, he said. Journee tensed slightly. She wasn't afraid, but she wasn't prepared for another dismissal. Not again. Brand took a breath. It's historic. The room gasped. She's right, he continued, louder now. Every step, every construct, every risk. She's not following a known theorem. She's created a new paradigm. Something no one in modern mathematical theory has formalized. He turned to the audience. This is a generational breakthrough. The room erupted. Not in cheers. Not yet. But in murmurs, gasps, and frantic questions. Journee didn't move. She stood still, dazed, as if the words hadn't landed yet. As if her body hadn't caught up to the reality. Brand stepped closer to the microphone. I'll be submitting this to the National Council for Mathematical Advancement tonight, he said. I will also be formally withdrawing my 2017 paper on bounded symmetry, which Miss Wallace has just disproved. A loud murmur swept across the faculty. Someone whispered, he's really doing it. Mercer sank slowly into his chair. Not from shame, but from exposure. Brand turned to Journee, and for the first time, there was no condescension in his gaze, no calculation, only gravity. I don't know where you learned to think like this, he said softly. She looked up. My grandfather. Brand paused. His name? James Wallace. Brand blinked. And there it was.
The connection.
He stepped back, visibly rattled. From the audience, Danica stood. Her voice shook, but it carried. You buried him. Don't you dare bury her. Brand swallowed hard.
I didn't know.
Danica's eyes blazed. You did. He froze. The silence returned. This time, with teeth. Catherine approached the stage, visibly unsure what to do next. That concludes the demonstration, she said awkwardly. Please, a round of applause for both participants. Only one side clapped, and it wasn't for Mercer. Afterward, students swarmed the stage, not reporters, peers, many of them in tears. Some just stood and stared at the board like it was a constellation they had only now learned to read. Tiana pushed through the crowd and hugged Journee hard. You did it, she whispered. You did more than it. I didn't do it alone, Journee replied. Danica finally reached her. They embraced silently. No words. Just breath. Just survival. Meanwhile, backstage, Brand stood in the shadows, his phone pressed to his ear. Yes, he whispered. It's real. Her logic system holds, it's even elegant. But it's not mine. It never was. He paused. No, we can't contain it. Another pause. She's 17. She already rewrote the work of 3 major theorists. If she publishes this independently, the entire field pivots. He listened, then said quietly, we either uplift her, or we're the men who get remembered as the ones who tried to silence her. Again, he hung up. And for the first time in decades, Dr. Elliot Brand didn't know what came next. At the far back of the auditorium, a door creaked open. A man entered quietly, his face half hidden beneath a hood. He watched from the shadows, eyes fixed on the board. When everyone else was gone, and the cameras were packing up, he stepped toward the stage. Journee turned. They locked eyes. He didn't speak, but he looked like someone who'd seen that board before, in a different time. Her voice cracked. Are you? But he held a finger to his lips, then slipped back into the dark. She stood frozen. Danica approached, but he was already gone. Journee whispered, Mom. I think that was Danica clutched her hand. I know. Dr. Brand announces that her proof is a generational breakthrough, while a mysterious hooded figure watches from the shadows. When Journee spots him, her world shifts again. It may be the man they thought was lost forever. The applause was deafening. Not the polite, obligatory kind that usually followed academic events. This was thunder, raw and unfiltered. Students surged forward like waves, phones raised, faces lit with awe and disbelief. The auditorium had turned into something unrecognizable. Cameras rolled without direction. Faculty members stood stiffly, some clapping with forced smiles, others frozen in stoic disbelief. A local news anchor nearly tripped over her own mic stand to get closer to Journee. The board behind her glowed with scribbled genius, untouched and preserved like modern art. But Journee barely moved. She didn't bask in it. She didn't grin. She stood with the stillness of someone who knew the applause wasn't a shield, only a pause before the storm. And the storm came fast. By nightfall, the livestream had reached 2.3 million views. Journee's name trended globally. Hashtags exploded. Wallace proof, Black math genius, rewrite the rules. Math forums and university professors praised her logic, calling it the most intuitive leap in decades. But elsewhere, a different narrative took root. Conservative blogs labeled the event a social justice performance. One article went viral. Affirmative action theater: how a high school girl outproved experts in 60 minutes. It showed a freeze frame of Journee mid-sentence, face caught in a blink, with the caption manufactured brilliance. Comment sections ignited. Scripted garbage. She didn't write that. Princeton should sue. She's just a diversity pawn. At 2:12 a.m., Journee's phone buzzed. A private message on her school account. We know where you live. Then another. MIT doesn't want you. You don't belong. By morning, her personal email had over 300 messages. Half of them threats, the other half thinly veiled racism, buried under pseudo-intellectual arguments. Danica blocked access to their home Wi-Fi, but the damage was done. Then came the email that shattered her. An official letter.
Digital signature.
University crest at the top. It was from the elite university that had offered Journee a full scholarship just weeks earlier. The subject line read, Scholarship Reevaluation Notification. The body was cold. Due to the ongoing media controversy and questions surrounding the integrity of the challenge event, we regret to inform you that we are placing your offer on hold, pending further review. Journee stared at the screen. Not because she didn't understand, but because she'd expected it. Danica paced the kitchen, barely able to speak. "They're folding," she said finally. "They're scared of backlash." Journee didn't reply. Her silence was louder than rage. The news cycle flipped within 48 hours. Local anchors who'd praised her now hedged their words. Though the challenge gained praise, others suggest it raises questions about academic rigor and public accountability. Principal Harding released a vague statement. "Ridgecrest remains committed to excellence and fairness for all students. We do not endorse any narrative outside of formal investigation." He never mentioned her by name. Dr. Mercer gave no interviews, but his silence said enough. "And Dr. Brand," he went dark.
No tweets.
No press, no defense. Then, it got worse. An anonymous account posted Journee's home address, photos of her high school ID, screenshots of her emails from the school server. Someone inside the system had doxed her. Tiana stayed with her every night. Danica installed cameras. Her little brother stopped walking to school. Threats came by mail now. And the school board? Silent. Journee felt the weight of it all, not just as personal attacks, but generational echoes. She saw it in her grandfather's torn journals, in the way her mother closed her laptop when reading headlines, in how people praised her work, but doubted her hands had written it. Truth, it seemed, wasn't enough. Not when it came from her. Then, on the 5th day after the auditorium event, her inbox pinged again. But this time, it wasn't hate. It was a single subject line. "Confidential Brand tried to block you." No sender. Just a Proton mail address. Journee opened it cautiously. Inside were 3 attachments. A PDF internal emails between Dr. Brand and Principal Harding, time-stamped days before the math challenge. Subject substituting an adjusted challenge problem. A voice memo, Brand's assistant, whispering into a recorder. He said she's too dangerous. If she gets it right, it discredits his last 10 years. He's planning to sabotage the envelope. A scanned document, a copy of another challenge problem, dated and labeled. The one originally meant for the event. It wasn't the one Journee had received. Her hands shook as she clicked through each file. Danica read over her shoulder. They looked at each other not with shock, but with confirmation. Journee closed the laptop. "This isn't about proving myself," she said. "It never was." Danica nodded slowly. "Then what is it now?" Journee didn't hesitate. "Proof is what they demanded, but justice is what I'll deliver." An anonymous whistleblower emails Journee with proof that Dr. Brand tried to sabotage her before the event. The sabotage was real. The proof was switched. And now, it's her turn to fight back. Journee sat at the kitchen table, her laptop open like a window into war. Each click was another betrayal confirmed. Each email, time-stamped, signed, and direct, detailed a conspiracy with academic fingerprints. "Let's ensure the challenge is appropriately scaled beyond the student's current abilities." Dr. Brand to Principal Harding. 3 days before the event. Replace the envelope contents the morning of the challenge. Internal memo marked confidential. CC'd to a Ridgecrest IT staffer. Public perception must be managed. We'll praise her poise, not her proof. School board member. Flagged for urgent review. Journee scrolled slowly. They hadn't just tried to discredit her. They tried to control her narrative, to turn her into a performance instead of a person. A showcase of bravery under pressure, while erasing the very brilliance that threatened their reputations. Danica stood behind her, arms crossed, eyes locked on the screen. "They weren't afraid of you failing," she said softly. "They were terrified of you winning." Journee exhaled sharply, and for the first time in days, she wasn't just hurt, she was angry. By morning, the leak had reached every major education outlet. The headline on the Chronicle of Higher Ed read, "Sabotage Genius, Emails Reveal Plot to Derail Black Students' Breakthrough." Screenshots of the documents circulated everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, TikTok. A short explainer video titled, "They Tried to Break Her. She Rewrote the Rules." Racked up 5 million views in under 24 hours. Activist groups rallied. Students at 3 different universities walked out of classes, holding signs that read, "Journee solved the math. Now solve the racism. Gifted. Black. Set up. We see you, Brand." The school board at Ridgecrest scrambled into crisis mode. An emergency hearing was called. Closed door, but not closed leak. One audio clip slipped to the press revealed Dr. Mercer refusing to admit wrongdoing. "I never said she wasn't intelligent. But brilliance can't be verified without consistency. I did what I believed was fair at the time. The quote spread like wildfire. He became a symbol, not of racism in its loudest form, but in its quietest, the kind that wears a tie and says, "I was just doing my job." Within 48 hours, Mercer resigned. His statement was brief. "I am stepping down from my position to avoid further distraction." He offered no apology. Journee didn't need one, because his silence was the confession. In the wake of the resignation, Journee's inbox filled again, but this time with invitations. A California research lab wanted her to visit. A New York-based STEM advocacy group asked her to speak. A publisher offered a book deal, but one email stood out. The subject line: "Invitation to the Athenaeum Circle. Confidential." It was brief. "You are cordially invited to present your proof privately to members of the Athenaeum Circle, an unpublicized gathering of international scholars, including select faculty from Ivy League institutions. This symposium is off-record and closed to media. If interested, please reply within 20." No signature, no contact number, just a name: Dr. Cedra Holmes. Journee looked up at Danica. "What do I do with this?" Danica raised an eyebrow. "What do you want to do with it?" That night, Journee lay awake, staring at her ceiling. This was bigger than redemption. It was opportunity and threat. A chance to show the most powerful academic minds what she could do, without media spin. But it also reeked of quiet containment, a private stage, a hidden review, a test behind closed doors. Still, something pulled at her. Not ambition, not revenge, legacy. If they'd tried to silence her in public, maybe speaking in their hidden sanctuaries was exactly what justice looked like now. She opened her laptop and replied, "Yes." The next day, she received an encrypted folder. Inside, directions, rules, and travel arrangements. No press was to be informed. No video allowed. She would be given 1 hour, one board, one question, of their choosing. It would be held inside a private university library in Massachusetts, one not listed on public maps. Journee printed the packet in silence. Danica read over her shoulder. "They're scared of you," she said quietly. Journee folded the paper. "Good." Meanwhile, across town, Dr. Brand sat in his home office, face lit by the harsh glow of his second monitor. His phone buzzed. He answered. "They're calling an inquiry," the voice said. Brand leaned back. "Of course they are. They want to know if you're going to defend your record." Brand scoffed. "Which one? The one I plagiarized or the one I buried?" The line went quiet. "You're unraveling, Elliot." He smiled bitterly. "So is the system." In his inbox sat a reply he hadn't opened yet. It was from Cedra Holmes. Subject: Athenaeum. She accepted. He didn't click it. He didn't have to. He already knew what it said. Back at Ridgecrest, the halls buzzed with tension. Teachers avoided eye contact with Journee. Some whispered apologies they were too afraid to say aloud. Others stared with something worse than resentment. Envy. She'd done what they never dared, break a mold designed to contain her. Journee packed her bag in silence the night before the trip. Tiana helped fold her clothes. "You're really going to do this?" Journee nodded. "They're going to test you again," Tiana warned. "I know. You could say no." Journee looked up. "I'm not going for them," she said. "I'm going for the next girl they try to erase." Tiana smiled, misty-eyed. "Then burn the board down." Journee is invited to speak at a secret mathematical symposium, one attended by Ivy League professors, behind closed doors. But will this be her elevation, or her next ambush? The car that picked Journee up from the airport was black, unmarked, with a tinted back seat and a driver who didn't speak. She didn't ask questions. Not because she wasn't curious, but because she already knew she wasn't being escorted to a symposium. She was being evaluated. The vehicle wound through back roads, past silent towns and fog-laced forests, before finally stopping in front of an unmarked estate with ivy-strangled walls. It looked more like a fortress than a library. There was no welcome sign, no banner, just heavy doors and history. A woman greeted her at the entrance. Sharp features, silver hair, and a name tag that simply read, Dr. Holmes. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. "They're already inside." Journee followed her through the marble corridors. The silence felt designed, sacred, the kind that whispered secrets into its own architecture. They entered a circular chamber with no windows, only a domed ceiling painted with constellations. At the center stood a single blackboard, Clean, massive, untouched. Around it, 25 scholars sat in tiered rows, men and women, most older, all watching her. No introductions. No applause. Just expectations. Begin when you're ready, Holmes said. Journee stepped forward. She held no notes. No script. Only memory. She picked up the chalk and didn't write a number. Instead, she drew a curve. Then a spiral. Then a pattern that resembled an Adinkra symbol. Eben, the symbol for safety and security in African symbology. Murmurs rose around the room. She spoke clearly. I was taught that math was universal. But it's not. It's inherited. And like anything inherited, it reflects the biases of those who passed it down. Silence. She continued. My proof was never about beating a system. It was about revealing that it wasn't built to include minds like mine. So I rebuilt it, with logic informed by both intuition and history. She turned to the board. Then she began. Over the next 30 minutes, Journee unfolded a new language of math, one shaped by African diasporic geometry, indigenous conceptions of balance, and logic that emphasized cyclical connectivity, rather than linear hierarchy. She used rhythm as variable weight. She introduced symbols inspired by traditional African patterns, recontextualized into recursive functions. Her structures weren't just valid, they were beautiful. Some scholars leaned forward, stunned. Others scribbled furiously. One man whispered, "This isn't math, it's philosophy." Another replied, "No, it's both." Journee spoke with calm authority, building toward the core of her system. A theorem she called the Wallace Bridge, designed to link incomplete datasets across irregular frameworks without bias toward conventional symmetry. It was the backbone of her proof, and it left the room breathless. At the 39th minute she paused. She turned to the circle of scholars. I didn't come here to be celebrated, she said. I came here to ask why my grandfather's genius was erased, why I was nearly erased, and why we still wait for approval before rewriting what we know is broken. A long silence followed. Then, a single clap. From the oldest member of the circle, a frail white man, with trembling hands and watery eyes. I've been doing this for 60 years, he said, and I've never seen this. Others joined slowly, clapping not for show, but because they just witnessed something undeniable. Dr. Holmes stood. Miss Wallace, she said, you have not simply solved a problem. You have created a new framework, one we cannot afford to ignore. She turned to the audience. I move that we offer her an honorary research fellowship under our joint initiative with Harvard, Princeton, and Oxford, effective immediately. A murmur of stunned assent rippled across the chamber. Holmes looked back at Journee. Do you accept? The question was rhetorical. Or so they thought, because Journee didn't answer. Not right away. She looked around the room, at the faces who'd once been unreachable, then down at the chalk in her hand, still stained white from the past hour. She thought of her grandfather, of the doxing, of the silence that had followed her first proof, and then of the next girl who would walk into a classroom only to be called a lucky guess. She inhaled, then exhaled, and as the room leaned in, waiting for her voice, she paused. A top university offers Journee a research fellowship, on livestream, but Journee pauses before answering. What she says next could redefine more than just her future. It could ignite a revolution. The silence in the chamber stretched long enough to become something sacred. Journee Wallace stood at the front of the room, eyes sweeping over the 25 scholars who held her future in their hands. The offer still hung in the air, a golden key wrapped in centuries of gatekeeping. A Harvard, Princeton, Oxford research fellowship. Prestige, power, permanence. For anyone else, the answer would have been simple. But Journee didn't come here for their approval. She came to end the need for it. Dr. Holmes smiled softly, assuming hesitation meant humility. Take your time, Miss Wallace. This kind of opportunity. Journee's voice cut through her sentence. Calm. Precise. Measured. I appreciate it, she said, but I can't accept. The words hit the room like glass breaking in slow motion. Every head turned. Every pen stopped moving. Holmes blinked, the faintest frown tugging at her mouth. I beg your pardon? Journee stepped forward, standing taller now. I'm grateful for the recognition, but a fellowship under your institutions would only repeat the same cycle that tried to erase me, and my family, in the first place. The air shifted. Her tone didn't waver. My proof doesn't belong to Harvard or Princeton. It belongs to every girl who was told her curiosity was arrogance. To every student whose mind was measured by the comfort of others. I'm not here to fit in your halls. She paused. I'm here to build new ones. A stunned murmur rippled through the scholars. One of the senior professors, his voice frail but honest, leaned toward his mic. Miss Wallace, what exactly are you proposing? Journee turned toward the audience. I'm creating a foundation, she said clearly. It'll fund and mentor black girls in STEM, not just to study math, but to own it, to question it, to reshape it. I'm calling it the Wallace Initiative. Holmes blinked rapidly, caught between admiration and alarm. Do you have resources for something that ambitious? Journee smiled faintly. No, but I have reach. And she did. Because unbeknownst to the scholars, a student attending the symposium had been live streaming the entire presentation. Her proof, her refusal, her declaration. The video was already spreading across social media like wildfire. By the time Journee left the hall, her name had already climbed into the global trending list again. Wallace Initiative. Reclaim the proof. Math belongs to us. Within hours, millions had seen the moment she said no to the Ivy League. Clips played on the news. I'm here to build new halls. Editorials flooded in. Some praised her courage, others called her ungrateful, naive, or performative. Yet the louder the backlash grew, the louder the world rallied. Donations poured in from every corner. Engineers, teachers, artists, parents, celebrities, even anonymous students. By dawn, the Wallace Initiative had raised over $2 million. Journee hadn't even built a website yet. At home, Danica watched the news, hand over her mouth. Her daughter's face poised, steady, radiant, flashed across every major network. Anchors debated her decision. Universities issued statements. Hashtags turned to movement. Tiana burst through the door, waving her phone. Journee, you're everywhere. They're calling you the girl who refused the gate. Journee laughed softly, shaking her head. I didn't refuse the gate. I just built a door. Danica hugged her from behind, whispering, he'd be so proud of you. Journee looked down at her hands. Maybe he already knows. Later that evening, the Wallace house was quiet again. The chaos had settled into something surreal. The eye of a new kind of storm. Journee sat on the porch, laptop on her knees, drafting the first official mission statement for the Wallace Initiative. She typed slowly, carefully. Mathematics is not neutral. It remembers who was allowed to write it. We are here to change what and who it remembers. She stared at the words for a long time before pressing save. Across the country, reactions continued to divide along invisible lines. At Harvard, a senior mathematician wrote, her ideas are untested, but the courage to reject institutional dependency is genius in itself. At Princeton, Mercer's former colleagues distanced themselves, calling him a misguided mentor. At MIT, one retired professor asked to see the footage twice. His hands trembled as he whispered to an assistant, I've seen that logic before, a long time ago. That night, Danica found Journee still awake. Papers spread across her desk. Baby, you need to rest, she said softly. Journee smiled faintly. I can't. There's too much to do. Danica sat beside her. You don't have to change the world in 1 week. Journee looked up. But if I stop now, they'll try to rewrite it again before morning. Her mother reached over and touched her cheek. Let them try. This time, they'll have to go through you. A week later, the Wallace Initiative held its first online summit. Thousands tuned in, teachers from underfunded schools, students from Ghana, Trinidad, and Chicago, scholars who saw themselves reflected for the first time in someone who didn't fit their mold. Journee opened the event with a line that would echo far beyond the live stream. They asked me to prove my worth. I proved their limits instead. Applause flooded the feed, and for the first time Journee allowed herself to cry. Not from pain, from relief. Her story had become more than headlines. It was a shift. Textbooks began citing her theorem as the Wallace framework. Colleges reevaluated hiring practices in STEM. High schools requested her lectures. She became not the girl who solved the impossible equation, but the woman who solved the unspoken one. How to exist fully intelligently and unapologetically, where she was never meant to. Days blurred into movement. Emails from foundations, invitations to speak, endorsements from organizations she had once looked up to from a distance. But Journee remained grounded. When a major university offered to host her foundation, she politely declined again. We don't need a host, she said. We need independence. And still, the offers kept coming. The story was too big to contain. Her name was no longer just a headline. It was a statement. Journee Wallace, the girl who refused to play by equations written without her in mind, and rewrote them all. One evening, as the sun fell behind the Virginia horizon, the doorbell rang. Danica answered. No reporters this time, no cameras, just a single envelope. Plain, cream-colored, no return address. The front read simply, to Journee Wallace, personal, but the handwriting was elegant, precise, familiar. Journee took it, frowning. Who sent this? Danica shook her head. No idea. But look at the seal, embossed in red wax. Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Journee's stomach tightened. She tore it open carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper, yellowed at the edges, typed on an old mechanical machine. The date, June 4th. Her eyes skimmed the letterhead, then froze. At the bottom of the page, beneath the institutional stamp, was a name signed in fountain pen. James Wallace, her grandfather. Alive or not, his words had just come home. Journee's breath caught as she read the first line aloud. To whoever continues what I could not, your proof will finish mine. Don't stop at solving equations. Solve the world that misread them. Danica covered her mouth, tears spilling. Journee folded the letter slowly, holding it against her chest. Outside, thunder rolled low across the night sky, like applause from the past. And for the first time, she understood what legacy really meant. It wasn't being remembered. It was remembering yourself, loud enough that the world could never forget again. A letter arrives in the mail, from MIT, dated 1983, signed by her grandfather, James Wallace. His words reveal a prophecy she's only just begun to fulfill. If this story moved you, don't let it disappear. Like, share, and subscribe, so her voice echoes louder than their silence. And tell us in the comments, what would you do if the world dared you to fail?